Hey, today, as I speak, it's Erev Rosh Hashanah as we head into the year 5786, and I wouldn't record it on the holiday itself, record my first talk for the first day of Rosh Hashanah on Covenant. So this is for Temple Shalom in 5786, 2025. 2 years ago, on Rosh Hashanah in 2023, I spoke about the conceptia, the false premise of deterrence and security that led Israeli leadership to underestimate the threats it faced from hostile neighbors, leading to the disasters of the Yom Kippur War 50 years before. My point being that present-day Israeli leadership had a conceptia that threatened the reborn Jewish commonwealth from within by pursuing divisive judicial overhaul plans that would remove many or most of the key checks and balances that make democracies. Israeli society was riven with protests and anger. There's an obvious lack of unity then in 2023 that we now know that Yahya Sinwar and the Hamas leadership misread as weakness. It was concerning. I was right that there was a dangerous conceptia. I was, of course, wrong with what it was. Successive Israeli governments had thought Hamas deterred, happy with controlling its territory, collecting funds from abroad meant for its population, and launching relatively small-scale attacks against Israel every so often. My thought then, in September 2023, was that for all the external threats to Israel, the greatest threat was internal. So, a year ago, on Rosh Hashanah 5785, I spoke of my concepcias, my false presumptions. I thought a genocidal totalitarian Islamic movement that opposes most everything every Westerner, right or left, holds sacred would find little sympathy. I was wrong. I thought institutions committed to fighting bigotry would follow through even when Jews or Israelis were targeted. I was wrong. I thought Republicans and Democrats would call up members of their own party when they trafficked in bigotry, platformed anti-Semites, or pretended that Israel was the only force fighting this terrible war. But I was wrong. Like many other angry rabbis last year, what I said could be summarized by saying we can no longer afford to be October 6th Jews. Hamas does not want two states for two peoples, or a free Palestine for that matter, nor can it be deterred with economic incentives or even increased liberties. And American Jews cannot assume that Western institutions, in which we have placed so much of our trust and identity, will respond on the day we call. As Israelis united in facing Hamas's despicable desire to maximize Israeli and Palestinian suffering, to those who disagree not only with Israeli policy or strategy, but with Israel's very existence. The locus of the threat had switched from internal to external. So what of today, in Rosh Hashanah 5786? If 2 years ago I was concerned, and a year ago angry, now what? Those of you who hit the skip recap button are starting here. Now that all of the factors that led to the conclusion that the greatest threat to the Jewish state was internal have grown, and all the external threats that are largely still present, what now? I went to a talk for rabbis, New York, where the guest speaker was a former host of a religion program on NPR, Krista Tippett, with the soft, dulcet tones that the role suggests. And I was apprehensive. My assessment of the Gaza war is different than what I often hear in the media, so my guard was up. And Krista Tippett, who is not of the Mosaic persuasion, starts by saying, when I look at Jewish communities, when I look at Jewish people, when I see Jews in the United States or in Israel, I see a people that are heartbroken for all that has happened, heartbroken for all that's been said, or shouted, or chanted, or posted, heartbroken for what has not been said. She said she saw people that was heartbroken for the silence of allies we thought were there, heartbroken at the continuing toll of the hell that is war, and heartbroken from all the things that Jews are called and have been called and will be called. Heartbroken. And you know, For all of my old false conceptions, for all of the anti-Zionist encampments, for all those who abandon our people's ideals to somehow still underestimate Hamas, for those who support Jewish extremists, enemies of decency, for those who abandon principles in the name of power. I so often feel anger and rage, but I realized that this Rosh Hashanah, I need to pause. I just feel heartbroken. We're a heartbroken people. In the Psalms it says, Bonei Yerushalayim, Adonai nidchei Yisrael yichanes. Adonai rebuilds Jerusalem. God gathers in the exiles of Israel. Harufei l'shuvrei lev, mechabez la'atzmotam. And God heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. From biblical times to today, there's been a link between rebuilding Jerusalem and recognizing that we do so as our broken hearts can be healed. And the Psalms point out that God is not just a judge or a distant ruler or a warrior, but here, the one who heals the brokenhearted. And while we may feel brokenhearted, it's worth remembering that Torah has a different name for the people of Israel. Am kashay oraf, a stiff-necked people, stubborn, unwilling or unable to do anything but look ahead. Sometimes this name might be complimentary, usually not so much. But it might be that stiff-neckedness, that stubbornness can help us through this heartbreak, through the heartbreaking aspects of this war, the hostages, the death, the sacrifice, the rubble, the unavoidable tragedies, and the avoidable tragedies. The Jewish people have long lived across the globe in intensely different situations with different interests, but we, the surviving remnant of our people, have withstood challenges through understanding ourselves as being part of a covenant, a brit between the Jewish people and God, a brit with each other, and a brit with all of humanity and all of creation. Though Jews worldwide are to feel a connection through our brit, our shared sense of covenant, there's an ocean that exists between us. This was obvious to me when some members of the Temple Shalom community and I went to Israel in February to do a bit of volunteering and learning. Israelis living in range of Hezbollah rockets, oddly but sincerely, said that we were brave for visiting. To them, feeling alone in the world, they felt seen by a gesture of support. So much so that in Kiryat Shmona in the north, a veritable ghost town where 85% of the population evacuated on and after October 7th, 2023, an appreciative resident sent a video of us cleaning up an otherwise abandoned park. He sent it to a Today Show style program to be an inspiring story for Israelis, that they're not abandoned. We also visited an army base in the south, speaking with a young tank commander who told us of waking up in his home in northern Israel on October 7th, driving his private car south to the base, blasting through the Hamas obstacles to report for duty and immediately into action. He said he sees images of some young American Jews protesting Israeli military action, saying, "Not in my name." He said with a smile, "It's okay. Nothing he or his comrades do is in American Jews' name." He acts to protect his wife and children and other residents of Israel, not in the name of anyone abroad. It's a cute line, but it does underline the tension in the perspective of Jews around the world. Many Israelis support a pause in fighting. Few, if any, imagine it would be an end to the war. This is one battle in a larger, longer-running war. For those who doubt that we're one people, the fact that a young IDF tank commander at an army base deep in the Negev takes the time to consider the perspective of an American Jewish student is evidence that a connection exists. The ocean separating our people? Heartbreaking. The widening gap in Jewish perspective and the very real horrors of war, disproportionately borne by those trapped in Hamas's cruel strategy, overshadow the positive events of the last year. In a stunning act of targeted war, an extraordinary intelligence coup, despite the fact that Hezbollah had tens of thousands of missiles and rockets aimed at Israel, Israel took Hezbollah's fingers off the launch buttons. Using pages and walkie-talkies as precisely targeted weapons, Israel showed not just ingenuity, but a desire to try to end wars with minimal civilian casualties when possible, the opposite of Hamas's strategy of engineering mass suffering in Gaza. Hezbollah and Israel reached a ceasefire in November, thank God, and the Lebanese government has been strengthened, and civilians on both sides of the border can breathe easier. Bashar Assad, the butcher of Damascus, has been deposed after causing the death of hundreds of thousands of Syrians, including Palestinians, and displacing millions and millions of his own people. There is a real possibility that a de-escalating agreement between Israel and Syria is close. We do not know how far Iran's nuclear capabilities have been set back, but they have been. And the billions of dollars Iran has spent on trying to eliminate Israel have been shown to be a failure, while their own people hope for human necessities like water. In any other year, any one of these events would have been a definitive victory for Israel in its battle against dictators who repeatedly declare their desire to destroy the Jewish state. But it all gets obscured by the devastating, horrible war in Gaza or a distracting presidential tweet. Still, compared to the situation 1 year ago, Israel is in a much stronger position vis-a-vis Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. If peace, please God, requires security, a path to a more peaceful future may still exist. American Jews are a mixed group. They are core Jewish value. Standing with the soldier, who feels he's merely defending his family, the student, for whom peace is an immediate imperative. We live in a culture that often valorizes the victim, incentivizing claiming victim status. But it's time to trade the comfort of victimhood for the responsibility of agency. This, of course, is the core of the High Holy Days and of Judaism. We cannot control the world, despite some online claims to the contrary. Neither you nor I are members of the Netanyahu government's war cabinets, or opinions on military strategy are of limited value. None of us are in the Hamas Politburo, so our opinions on what they should do isn't so relevant. We're not the circle of people influencing the president's opinions, so our disagreements on politics can safely remain just that. And the mitzvah of this season is to take responsibility for our own actions, not to ruminate on how others should live their lives differently, but how we can live our lives differently. You and me, all of us, individually, together. We know both that Israel's war for survival is just, and one can question the wisdom of that war, as hundreds of thousands of Jewish Israelis do, without being an anti-Zionist. We know that this is a great and good country, and questioning government policies is part of being a patriotic American, just as in the days of George Washington's administration, when Adams, Hamilton, and Jefferson vehemently disagreed on fundamental policy issues. They called each other names, too. Part of the advantage of being an ancient people is the knowledge that we can wrestle and remain connected. This is in part because of our self-critical tradition, but also part of our brit, our covenant. Your phone wants you to take a minute-by-minute short view, reacting to every provocation, and your Torah wants you to take a long view, a deep breath, and the perspective of a tradition that bridges the Bronze Age to the age of artificial intelligence. We were stiff-necked long before too much phone time made us that way. There's a breadth of ways Jews have felt claimed by our historical covenant. This remains true today. We're a diverse people. Still, to be a distinct people, boundaries are required. We're to be committed to the foundational principle of Torah, that all humans are created in the image of God and inherently worthwhile. Wars are also sometimes necessary, and by definition, they test that commitment. That's always been the case. But the access technology gives us to war's dark realities, and Hamas's strategy of exploiting human concern make this a difficult moment. As the Israeli teacher Yossi Klein Halevi writes, even when fighting an existential war against enemies without moral restraint, there are limits to what is morally permitted to the Jewish state. And given the nature of our enemy and the threats against us, there are limits to the self-recriminations Jews should assume. Couple that with Israeli government ministers like Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, who essentially echo the river to the sea calls for ethnic cleansing just from the other side, and who influence Israel's failed attempt to prevent Hamas from profiting off of food aid, resulting in unnecessary civilian suffering. We're left with a reality that is heartbreaking. Hamas and their allies are genocidal maniacs who publicly say that campus protests and UN declarations encourage them to continue their fight, making the anti-Israel or pro-Palestinian movement unwittingly complicit in Gaza's suffering. Whatever we think of them, Hamas thinks those protests are pro-Hamas. Our covenant obligates us to stand with our siblings in the land of Israel. We have not come this far to abandon each other. And love does not mean pretending that every decision is perfect. The people Israel got our name from wrestling with the divine. We're not about to become automatons? I can never say the word. Now, it's worth supporting Israeli institutions that strengthen the vital centrist heart of the state of Israel, the broad center, who have disproportionately borne the massive weight of this war effort. Avraham Avinu knew from the start that the Brit meant both solidarity and voicing his moral concerns. Moshe Rabbeinu did the same, both serving God and questioning God. Our covenantal obligations demand we defend our people from internal and external threats. And now, we remain obligated, forevermore, not to be October 6th Jews. We cannot assume that all will be well as long as the implacable foes exist, and implacable foes exist. We have to understand that at tank commander that I met in Israel, for him, it's eternally October 7th. And he wants to defend his wife and children and parents and friends and will not be deterred. And it's okay to understand the October 8th attitude of much of the world, that it's necessary to find a way to feed and house an immiserated population. It's not disloyalty to give a damn. Our covenantal obligations now demand that we wrap the lessons of October 6th, the obligations of October 7th, and the concerns of October 8th into an understanding for today, 2 years in. Not being lulled into a false sense of security, and knowing that even the most bitter Shiva ends, even the most profound mourning period concludes and begins its slow progression to a dull pain, to mournful moments, and to annual memorials. If we never get up from Shiva, we never restart living. Death and burial mark the beginning of Shiva. Jewish law mandates that at a set time it ends, as the mourner rises and then walks forward into the world. We are heartbroken. Maybe it's impossible with videos of hostages digging their own graves to be anything but. And we are a stiff-necked people. Am Kshei Oref. And it's that stubbornness, as much as the covenantal way of thinking, that has kept us around for millennia against incredible odds, in times no better than these. The Psalms movingly say, Azorim Dima, Berina Yiksoru, the one who plants with tears will reap with songs of joy. For all of those who have soaked the ground with tears, may the new year bring songs of joy to their lips. And may the new year of 5786 be filled with blessings, health, fulfillment, security, freedom, joy, and peace. Shana Tova Tikatefa. May you and your loved ones be inscribed for a good year.